Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Join the official Telegram channel of Rao's IAS Study Circle to stay updated and get all the materials on the Telegram. The link to the channel can be found in the description box. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from our UPSC Civil Services examination perspective. Today, let us discuss the important news which has appeared in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 21st of December 2021. The news to be discussed has been displayed on the screen and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion from our prelims and mains point of view. So let's take the first news appearing on page number 1. It says, Lok Sabha passes bill to link electoral rolls with Aadhaar. Government says the process will purify the voters list. However, the opposition slams it for tearing hurry. Now, the government has introduced the Election Laws Amendment Bill 2021 to link Aadhaar with that of voter ID. And for this purpose, amendments have been proposed under Representation of People Act of 1950, whereby the electoral registration officers have been empowered to link Aadhaar of a voter with that of voter ID. However, as you can see in this news, number of oppositions have been raised against this particular proposal on various accounts, such as infringement of right to privacy, along with lack of a data protection bill. So, based on these concerns, let's understand this particular topic both from our prelims and mains perspective, especially from the perspective of Indian polity and governance in the prelims and in the mains under GS paper 2 with respect to functions and responsibilities of the union and also government policies and interventions for development in various sectors. Now, before going into the intricacies of this particular amendment of linking Aadhaar and voter ID, let's have a clear understanding of the backdrop to this particular linking. Now, earlier, the Election Commission also tried to link voter ID with that of Aadhaar. However, because of a lack of a law, this aspect could not be continued further, and also because of the Supreme Court judgment on Aadhaar, which categorically declared that the use of Aadhaar, or rather the seeding of Aadhaar, is a voluntary process unless Aadhaar is used for subsidies, benefits or services for which the monies have been provided under the Consolidated Fund of India as per the new Aadhaar bill. Now, another controversy which arose few years back with respect to Aadhaar bill was that this bill was passed as a money bill. So the Supreme Court stated that as far as Aadhaar is used with respect to subsidies, benefits and services for which the funds are taken from the Consolidated Fund of India, for such purposes only the use of Aadhaar can be said to be mandatory. Otherwise, the use or synchronization of Aadhaar or seeding of Aadhaar with any other card can be said to be a voluntary process. Now, the second important highlight with respect to this particular linking is the K.S. Puttaswamy judgment, which declared that right to privacy is a part of Article 21 and is part of an inalienable right to life and personal liberty. And here the Puttaswamy judgment also stated that the state can make a law which infringes right to privacy. However, such a law must fulfill the threefold test of legality. That is, there must be a law for that particular purpose, there must be a rational need or a rational reason to fulfill that objective, and the step taken by the government must be proportional. So again, linking of Aadhaar with that of EPIC card or electoral photo identity card must fulfill these threefold tests if a petition is filed in the Supreme Court tomorrow. And the third point with respect to the backdrop of this linking is the lack of a data protection law. As we all know that currently a joint parliamentary committee is looking into the aspects of data protection law as was suggested by the B.N. Sri Krishna Commission report. So after understanding these three important points with respect to linking of Aadhaar and EPIC card, let's go through the important provisions of Election Laws Amendment Bill 2021. So this bill proposes an amendment under Representation of People Act of 1950 under section 23. Now this amendment highlights that the electoral registration officer, in order to establish the identity of a voter, can require the Aadhaar number of the concerned voter. However, so far, this process can be said to be voluntary as per the Supreme Court judgment on Aadhaar. Now, establishing the identity of the voter will be done through the electoral roll of a particular constituency. And for this particular purpose, the electoral registration officer may require the Aadhaar number of such people whose name is already included in the electoral roll. That is, such people whose name already exists in a particular constituency. That is, such people who are entitled to vote in a particular constituency. So even for such people, the electoral registration officer can ask for or may require the Aadhaar number of such people for linking it with the electoral roll. Now, this bill highlights that the whole purpose of this linking is authentication of entries. Now, authentication of entry simply means to find out whether the person is a legitimate person or whether the name of the person appears twice, either in the same constituency or in different constituencies. So the whole idea of this authentication of entries through the use of Aadhaar number is to weed out duplicity. In case the person is registered in more than one constituency, or in case the person's name appears twice or more in the same constituency. So this is the whole idea behind linking Aadhaar with that of electoral photo identity card. Now, another very important highlight of this election laws amendment bill is that it says that no application for inclusion of name in the electoral roll shall be denied and no entries in an electoral roll shall be deleted for inability of an individual to furnish or provide Aadhaar number. So, in case a person does not provide their Aadhaar number, then that cannot be a reason either to delete their name from the electoral roll, or it cannot be a reason that a new entrant shall not be admitted in the electoral roll. And in this regard, in case the person does not want to provide their Aadhaar, then it says that such individual may be allowed to furnish such other alternate documents as may be prescribed by the Election Commission from time to time. Now, this amendment bill also provide for the qualifying dates for preparation of revision of electoral rules, which will be the first date of the months of January, April, July and October. Earlier, it was done only once in a year on 1st of January every year. So these can be said to be some of the important highlights of Election Laws Amendment Bill 2021. So in this aspect, let's also go through some of the merits and also concerns with respect to linking of Aadhaar with that of electoral photo identity card. Now, the merits of linking of Aadhaar with voter ID is to curb the menace of multiple enrollment of same person in different places, as it will help to check the entry of repeat, multiple, illegal, invalid or even false voters. So it will weed out the duplicity in the electoral rolls. And overall, this will help to reduce voting fraud by checking on duplication. Further, this will also help to improve accessibility of voting, especially for the migrant workers when they are able to link their Aadhaar with that of voter ID. Now, despite these merits, there are still a large number of concerns with respect to linking of Aadhaar with voter ID. Now, earlier the linking of Aadhaar card with that of voter ID was done by the state government of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. And because of this process, it led to the disenfranchisement of approx 55 lakh voters, thereby impacting their right under Article 326 of the Indian Constitution, which provides them a constitutional right to vote. So based on previous experiences, this can be said to be one of the major concerns for citizens, especially regarding the disenfranchisement, which is possible when Aadhaar card is linked with voter ID. So one of the concerns highlight possibility of disenfranchisement of voters due to integration leading to violation of universal suffrage under Article 326 as was witnessed in Andhra and Telangana. Further, it also says that in absence of a data protection law, such integration can undermine the integrity of electoral roll. And this has also been one of the major concerns expressed by various leaders from the opposition. Now, Aadhaar provides for biometric and demographic details. So one of the concerns highlighted is that these demographic details can be used by the government for targeted advertising or possible deletion of names from the electoral rolls. again impacting on the right to vote, which is a constitutional right as per Article 326 of the Indian Constitution. Now, according to the Aadhaar Act, biometric information means any photograph, fingerprint, iris scan, or such other biological attributes of an individual as may be specified by regulations from time to time. And demographic information as per Aadhaar Act means or includes information relating to name, date of birth, address, and such other relevant information of an individual as may be specified by regulation for the purpose of issuing an Aadhaar number, but it shall not include race, religion, caste, tribe, ethnicity, language, records of entitlement, income, or even medical history. It further says, given the reported scope for fraud with Aadhaar, this process could undermine the sanctity of the voter roll or electoral roll. Linking of Aadhaar must also pass the test of right to privacy under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, as it was also highlighted by K.S. Puttaswamy judgment. Now, another concern highlighted by the member of opposition is that Aadhaar is a card for residents, whereas voter ID is a card provided to citizens, and synchronizing a card which is made for resident with that of citizens may allow voting rights to non-citizens. So this is also one of the concerns highlighted in this particular news article. Now, while discussing about the K.S. Puttaswamy judgment, we also mentioned about the threefold test, namely that of legality, need, and proportionality. Now, here many experts believe that it will be difficult for Election Commission to pass this test of proportionality, especially with respect to linking of Aadhaar with voter ID. Now, regarding proportionality, it highlights that a law can be considered proportional only if there are no other less restrictive and equally effective alternatives, or such a law does not have a disproportionate impact on the rights of the holder. Now, as we have seen that this exercise conducted by the state government of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana resulted in disenfranchisement of approx 55 lakh voters, thereby impacting their constitutional right under Article 326. So the Election Commission must prove that this particular step will not violate the grounds of proportionality as has been suggested under K.S. Puttaswamy judgment, that is, it will not impact the rights of voters in a disproportionate way so that they are disenfranchised or their name from the electoral rolls are deleted. So it says that any disenfranchisement caused by linking of Aadhaar and voter IDs would be legally impermissible also, as it is neither allowed under Article 326 nor such a linking so far is also allowed under Representation of People Act. And such a linking, especially with respect to having a disproportionate impact on voting rights, may prove detrimental also for those people from marginalized communities or people belonging to the vulnerable sections of the population. So these can be said to be some of the concerns and merits with respect to linking of Aadhaar with voter ID. Now, in this backdrop, you should also know about the Aadhaar authentication for good governance, social welfare, innovation, knowledge rules of 2020. Now, these rules provide for various reasons for which UIDAI, that is Unique Identification Authority of India, can allow for Aadhaar authentication or syncing of Aadhaar with any other cards. So it says that the central government may allow Aadhaar authentication by requesting entities in the interest of good governance, preventing leakage of public funds, promoting ease of living of residents, and enabling better access to services for such people. The central government may allow Aadhaar authentication for the following purposes. These purposes include usage of digital platforms to ensure good governance, prevention of dissipation of social welfare benefits, and enablement of innovation and the spread of knowledge. However, this rule also says that Aadhaar authentication shall be done on a voluntary basis. Now, this is because of the Supreme Court judgment on Aadhaar. So, as per the rule, it highlights that on the receipt of proposal for Aadhaar authentication, if UIDAI is satisfied, then it shall inform the central government that the requesting entity may be allowed to perform Aadhaar authentication. And thereafter, Ministry or the Department of the Government of India or the state government may be authorized by the central government to allow for Aadhaar authentication. So these rules also provide for some of the important reasons for Aadhaar authentication, namely in the interest of good governance, for preventing leakage of public funds, promoting ease of living of residents, and enabling better access to services for such residents. And for these purposes, UIDAI may allow for Aadhaar authentication. Now, according to the Aadhaar Act, authentication means the process by which Aadhaar number of a person along with their demographic information or biometric information is submitted to the Central Identities Data Repository. And here the submission of demographic information and biometric information is with respect to the verification of the details, that is Aadhaar details, and such repository verifies the correctness or the lack thereof, that is the Central Identities Data Repository verify whether these demographic information and biometric information pertaining to Aadhaar number are correct or not on the basis of information available with it. So this is the exact meaning of authentication as per the Aadhaar Act of 2016. So these can be said to be some of the important issues pertaining to linking of Aadhaar with that of voter ID. And this topic becomes important both from our prelims perspective under Indian Polity and Governance, and question can also be asked under GS paper 2, especially pertaining to governance and also powers of UIDAI and Election Commission with respect to linking of Aadhaar and voter ID. With this understanding, let's move on to the next news of discussion. The next news for discussion appears as an editorial on page number 6. It says, a strategic bulwark. India must redouble efforts towards Central Asia to counter the great game rivalries. Now, this great game rivalries is because China, Russia, and United States of America, which has recently withdrawn from Afghanistan, wants to set its foothold in the Central Asian Republic countries, along with increasing their bilateral trade, as the Central Asian countries is rich in energy and there are a number of regions which have unexplored minerals or unexplored energy. So in this context of great game rivalries with respect to Russia, China, and United States, the role and importance of India's relationship with the 5 Central Asian Republic countries becomes important, not only from the perspective of increasing bilateral trade or exploring energy, but also to counter the threat of radicalization and terrorism emanating from countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan. And also because of the fact that Afghanistan as of now is being ruled under the regime of Taliban, with which India does not have a very healthy relationship. So based on this understanding, India's outreach to Central Asia becomes very important. And in this backdrop, even India's National Security Advisor during the Regional Security Dialogue discussed issues pertaining to Afghanistan, not only with respect to threat from Taliban, but also with respect to a resurgent China. Now here regarding the Regional Security Dialogue, the National Security Advisor highlighted the fact that all Central Asian republics worry about threats from Afghanistan, namely in the form of terrorism, radicalization, narcotics, and even refugees, especially after the stronghold of Taliban in the region. And these 5 Central Asian countries are Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. The concerns for India is to increase its bilateral trade. So as of now, there is a lack of bilateral trade with each of these 5 different Central Asian republics. So India must improve its bilateral trade across different sectors. Now another concern for India is that these Central Asian republics also maintain a continuing bilateral dialogue with Taliban. And because of this, we can also say that there is a considerable influence of Pakistan in the region which India wants to counter. Further, the article says that the geopolitical cross currents, especially with respect to the great game rivalry of that of Russia, China, and even United States of America, as they are trying to gain their foothold in the Central Asian region, all these efforts might undermine India's effort to improve its trade relation with the Central Asian republics. Now, India recently has provided a $1 billion line of credit for projects in Central Asia. Now, this can be countered by China's Belt and Road Initiative and $100 billion investment as a part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Now, the flip side to this $100 billion investment is that this also creates a debt trap policy for these Central Asian countries. That is, China provides loan to these Central Asian countries. However, Central Asian countries will not be able to repay back the interest along with the principal amount. And this overall leaves these countries under a huge debt from Chinese government. Now, this in a way also acts in favor of India, as India can highlight the threats not only from Taliban but also from a resurgent China, especially through its debt trap policy under the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, another concerns with respect to India's connectivity initiatives include the development on Chabahar port, as these developments are still under the threat of United States sanction against India, especially with further engagement with Iran along the Shahid Beheshti port along the Chabahar port. Further, there has been slow progress along the international north-south transport corridor, along with slow progress of Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. So all these efforts which India intends to undertake in the Central Asian region might be undermined not only from the policy of China but also from a strong Russian influence in the Central Asian Republic, and also the fact that United States is seeking foothold in the region, especially after withdrawal from Afghanistan. Now, another concern for India is that India's land connectivity in the Central Asian region is as of now hampered by Pakistan and Afghanistan because of Taliban. And because of this, Chabahar port becomes an important feature for connectivity to the Central Asia for India. However, threat of United States sanction on development along the Chabahar port becomes another major concern for India to establish its foothold in the Central Asian republics. So the question becomes that what should India do to counter this great game rivalries where China, Russia and United States are already establishing their foothold in the Central Asian region. So India, apart from improving its investment in the region, should also focus on providing humanitarian aid in the region. Now, based on this, the Central Asian republics have decided to provide humanitarian aid to Afghanistan based on United Nations Resolution 2593, which says that Afghan territory shall not be utilized or used for sheltering, training, or financing terrorists. Now, apart from providing humanitarian aid, India should also promote people-to-people ties in the field of education, medicine, culture, tourism, etc., as it will improve cultural ties between India and the Central Asian republics. Along with this, India should also continue engaging with the Central Asian countries through multilateral forums such as Shanghai Cooperation Organization and Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia. As through SEO, it also provides an opportunity to engage with China and Russia simultaneously. Further engaging through India Central Asia Business Council will help to promote business linkages for India and the Central Asian republics. So during its meeting of India Central Asia Dialogue, the Government of India has invited the Central Asian republics to join International Solar Alliance and Coalition for Disaster Resilience Infrastructure. Further, the Government of India has also invited the presidents of Central Asian republics as chief guest for Republic Day celebrations to be held on 26 January 2022. Further, the Central Asian republics have appreciated the signing of Memorandum of Understanding with respect to high-impact community development projects for socio-economic development in Central Asian countries through grant provided by the Government of India. And India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has stated that India intends to take the ties with Central Asian republics to the next level through 4 C's, namely that of commerce, capacity enhancement, connectivity, and contacts. So these can be said to be some of the highlights with respect to the third meeting of India Central Asia Dialogue. So this topic becomes important mainly from the perspective of international relation under GS paper 2, and questions can also be asked with respect to your prelims examination with respect to current events of international development. With this, let's take up the next news for discussion. Now the next news for discussion also appears in the article section on page number 7. It says the sustained attack on federalism. Steps by union government have undermined the principles of federalism, especially fiscal federalism, that is the sharing of finances between center and states, as the article suggests that center has accumulated such taxes which cannot be shared with the states, as these taxes forms part of Consolidated Fund of India. So this news becomes important mainly from the perspective of GS paper 2, especially under challenges pertaining to the federal structure. And on this note, question can also be asked from the section of Indian polity and governance. So let us understand this particular article from the perspective of undermining of Indian federalism despite constitutional guarantees. And in this regard, let's go through some of the important highlights with respect to sharing of revenue, increasing legislation especially on matters of state list and also concurrent list, thereby limiting the role of state, certain aspect of administrative issues where center have overriding powers over the states, and limiting the borrowing powers of states by certain conditions attached. So let us understand this whole aspect of undermining of federalism from the perspective of legislative issues, administrative issues, and financial issues. Now, from the perspective of legislative issues, this article highlights a number of legislations which have been enacted by the central government, which according to the author impacts upon the rights of states. So, we are witnessing increasing centralization through conversion of bills into money bill, where we have already seen the conversion of Aadhaar into a money bill. This also undermines the aspect of discussion on a particular bill, especially in the Raj Sabha, as Raj Sabha also acts as a federal chamber. So when bills are passed through the route of ordinance, then it impacts the deliberative power of Raj Sabha to discuss on important issues and highlights of that particular bill. Further increasing washouts of parliament, leading to lack of debates in parliament, and also passing of bills without sending most of the bills to parliamentary committees. So these can be said to be some of the instances of increasing centralization, especially from the perspective of legislative areas or legislative issues. Now, another point highlighted here is regarding the increasing use of concurrent list by the center to frame laws for socio-economic development. And in some of the entries utilized under concurrent list, most of the topics are found to be under the state list. For example, the 3 farm laws, which has now been repealed by the central government, were legislated under the concurrent list. However, we know that agriculture is a part of state list. Similarly, number of steps were taken with respect to health epidemics or health emergency by the union government, although health is a part of state subject. And during the pandemic, Disaster Management Act was used for lockdowns. It further mentions about greater central role in the Electricity Amendment Bill with respect to selection committee of State Electricity Regulatory Commission. So in the State Electricity Regulatory Commission, most of the members in the selection committee will be appointed by the, and hence these state electricity regulatory commissions will have direct appointee by the center. And the recent example of centralization of power can be said to be the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Amendment Act of 2021, as it disturbs the balance between Lieutenant Governor of Delhi and the elected Chief Minister and his Council of Ministers, as was highlighted by the Supreme Court judgment of 2018, where the Supreme Court said that LG cannot use his discretionary power in every decisions taken by the Council of Ministers and only in such decisions where they do not agree on certain terms. However, the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Amendment Act further disturbs this balance as it empowers the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi against the elected Chief Minister and their Council of Ministers. So from undermining of federalism with respect to legislative issues, let's go through the aspect of financial issues. Now, the first point with respect to financial issues of fiscal federalism can be said to be the limited borrowing powers of the state, which the Constitution of India provides under Article 293 of the Indian Constitution. So according to Article 293 of the Indian Constitution, any state government cannot borrow from outside India unless and until the government of India or the central government acts as a guarantor. So this in a way limits the borrowing powers of states, especially from outside India. Further, it says that higher share of cess and surcharge collected by the center under Article 271 of the Indian Constitution is not distributed among the states, because these cess and surcharge forms a part of consolidated fund of India and hence do not form a part of divisible pool of taxes, and hence these cess and surcharges collected by the center is not shared with the state governments. Now, another financial constraint for the state is that the central government is not able to pay the GST compensation cess to states, and this is also because of fall in revenue because of the COVID situation. Another area of financial constraint for the state is sharing of finances by the center with states with respect to centrally sponsored schemes. Now, in the centrally sponsored schemes, both the center and states share the finances. However, the provision of money under the centrally sponsored schemes also comes along with certain conditions or operational guidelines. Now, at times, states finds it difficult to implement these operational guidelines. So, at times, certain states do not end up implementing the centrally sponsored schemes. Rather, they implement their own scheme. And because of this, it results in loss of revenue for such state. It further mentions about lack of operational and financial autonomy to implement the centrally sponsored schemes by states as highlighted here. Now, another constraint is that the central government has recently reduced the number of left-wing affected districts as per its recent report, that is the recent report of Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, this also impacts central assistance to such districts of that particular states. So, because of reducing number of left-wing affected districts, the central assistance is not provided to such states. Now, another point highlighted is regarding the limit with respect to fiscal deficit of state, as the states cannot exceed 3% of state's GDP as per the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. Now, of late, because of the constrained economic situation because of lockdown also, the central government has relaxed this limitation of 3% to 5%. However, this relaxation came with fulfilling certain important conditions such as implementation of One Nation, One Ration Card policy, ensuring ease of doing business reforms in the state, ensuring urban local body or utility reforms, and also ensuring power sector reforms. Now, most of these reforms were difficult to achieve by for some of the states, and these conditionalities also constrained the borrowing power of some states. It further mentions about center's permission on future borrowings through recently launched 50-year interest-free loan for states. So this again acts as a constraint on the states. Further, the news mentions about suspension of MP LATs during COVID and transfer of the funds to Consolidated Fund of India. Now this again restrained some of the fund which was provided to the district administration for overall developmental purposes. Now the article further says that funds provided under PM CARES forms part of CSR exemption. However, same relaxation is not applied to the Chief Minister Disaster Relief Funds. So these can be said to be the aspect of fiscal federalism which constrains the revenue powers of state governments. Now, moving from financial issues to administrative issues, the first point highlighted here is regarding the discretionary powers of governor through which the center at times interfere with the functioning of states. Another aspect highlighted is regarding the reserving of bills for the president by the governor under Article 201, use of Article 356 to dismiss the government by the governor, increasing interference of governors and lieutenant governor in Delhi administration as we have seen in the case of Delhi, as it ignores the elected government of the place, special powers given to governors under 5th and 6th schedule of the area. The constitution also provides for certain constitutional asymmetry, that is providing more powers to certain states for their overall socio-economic development through special provisions provided under Article 371A to 371J. Further, lack of coordination with states on various issues of health facilities of state as health forms part of state list. Now the Constitution of India and other legislative mechanism provides for various mechanisms to solve interstate disputes through Interstate Council, Zonal Council and Northeast Council. Now Zonal Council has been constituted under State Reorganization Act, whereas Northeast Council has been constituted under Northeast Council Act. And Article 263 of the Indian Constitution mentions about formation of Interstate Council. So lack of proper functioning of these mechanisms such as Interstate Council, Zonal Council or even Northeast Council to settle the disputes between center and states or state and states also impacts the federal rights of states. Now lastly, the article says about creation of Ministry of Cooperation by the Union Government. Now this becomes interesting because recently the Supreme Court in its judgment has declared a part of Constitution 97th Amendment as invalid, which deals with state cooperatives. Because according to the Supreme Court, the state cooperatives are part of state list under entry 32. Hence, only that part of part 9b which deals with cooperatives has been declared as valid, which deals with the multi-state cooperatives. So these can be said to be some of the administrative issues where the federal rights of states have been impacted. So as a way forward, this article suggests to constitute another state-centric committee like the Rajmannar Committee to study the union-state relationships all over again. Now the article further says to implement the recommendations provided by the National Commission to review the working of the Constitution, as it suggested to constitute formal institutional framework to mandate and facilitate consultation between union and states in areas of legislation under the concurrent list. And also, there is a need to implement some of the important recommendations of Punchi Commission. Now, the Punchi Commission recommended a larger role for interstate council in the management of matters in concurrent or overlapping jurisdiction of union and states. It further recommended strengthening and mainstreaming of interstate council to make it a vibrant forum for all tasks contemplated in clause A to C of Article 263. Now, Article 263 of the Indian Constitution says that if any time it appears to the President that the public interest would be served by establishment of a council charged with the duty of inquiring into advising upon disputes which may have arisen between states, investigating and discussing subjects in which some or all of the states or union and one or more of the states have a common interest, or provide recommendations upon any subject, in particular recommendations for better coordination of policy and action with respect to that subject, then the President may by order establish such a council. Now here it's interesting to know that a permanent interstate council was constituted only by the year 1991 based on the recommendation of Sarkaria Commission. And in this regard, the Sarkaria Commission suggested to constitute a permanent interstate council for provision A, that is inquiring into and advising upon disputes which may have arisen between states. So the Punchi Commission has suggested to make all the provisions, namely A, B and C, that is provision with respect to inquiry, provision with respect to investigation and provision with respect to providing recommendation on state disputes should be made effective. So the Punchi Commission has suggested that the Interstate Council can have further expert advisory bodies or administrative tribunals with quasi-judicial authority. That is, their decision should be binding to give recommendations to the Council when needed, and Commission must be granted autonomy necessary for the functioning as a constitutional body independent of union and states and must be staffed accordingly. So the Punchi Commission has also suggested to make Interstate Council a constitutional body on the likes of Election Commission to settle disputes among different states. Thus, this article becomes very important both from a prelims and mains perspective, and questions have been asked with respect to the challenges pertaining to the federal structure of India. So in this regard, these challenges with respect to administrative issues, legislative issues and financial issues becomes an important topic for us to understand from an examination perspective. With this, let's move to the last article for today's discussion. The last news to be taken up appears on page number 10. It says that BIMSTEC working on joint disaster relief plans, and this joint disaster relief plan is named as SPANEX 21. Now this is a humanitarian assistance and disaster relief exercise for the BIMSTEC members. Now BIMSTEC stands for Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. So this exercise is between the BIMSTEC members nations and it has been organized in Pune in India. Now as of now, the BIMSTEC members includes Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Thailand. So this PANEX 21 exercise involves multiple agencies of these member nations of BIMSTEC. And these agencies review the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief mechanism and streamline the response strategy in the backdrop of any pandemic. So the equipment at display, which has been organized in association with Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, is aimed to showcase the niche industrial capabilities and capacities of the Indian industry on disaster relief operations. It further says that many innovative solutions, capabilities and range of products to assist the government agencies in planning, preparation and conduct of these humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations were also demonstrated to the delegates of members nations of BIMSTEC. Further, this exercise will facilitate improved coordination for meeting future challenges relating to cyclones, earthquakes or any other threats like the COVID-19. So, you must remember PANEX 21 mainly from your prelims perspective. And from your examination perspective, this topic becomes important from the perspective of security. Now, the importance of BIMSTEC members lies in the fact that these members lies in the littoral and adjacent areas of Bay of Bengal, as you can see these countries, and these countries constitutes a contiguous regional unity. Now, BIMSTEC not only connects South and Southeast Asia for India, but also the ecologies of the Great Himalayas and the Bay of Bengal. And BIMSTEC also acts as a platform for intra-regional cooperation between SAARC and ASEAN members. However, everything is not correct with the BIMSTEC members, as there are certain concerns as well. So the issues in the functioning of BIMSTEC includes tension among member states such as India, Nepal, India, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, Myanmar, Rohingya refugee crisis faced by Bangladesh. Now this has resulted in Rohingyas refugees fleeing from Myanmar either to Bangladesh or Thailand. And this has also increased the border conflict between Myanmar and Thailand. Now, even the uncertainties with respect to SAARC also impacts BIMSTEC. It says that both Nepal and Sri Lanka want the SAARC summit revived, even as they cooperate within BIMSTEC, however with a diluted zeal. Now, another concern is intrusion of China in the Southeast Asian space. Further, brutal crackdown and military coup in Myanmar has also impacted the functioning of BIMSTEC members. Further, the BIMSTEC FTA, which was negotiated way back in 2004, is yet not final, and the summits are not regular. So it says that BIMSTEC plan to hold summits every 2 years, but so far only 4 summits have taken place in 20 years up to 2018. And BIMSTEC has received special attention only after India decided not to continue the SAARC summit because of Pakistan. So it says that BIMSTEC received special attention as India chose to treat it as a more practical instrument for regional cooperation over a faltering SAARC. And lastly, it says that despite COVID-19, various multilateral groupings such as G20 and ASEAN conducted their deliberations virtual or online. And even here, BIMSTEC leaders have failed to conduct any summit so far. So overall, these can be said to be some of the issues in the functioning of BIMSTEC. So from this particular topic, you should know about PENX 21, which is a humanitarian assistance and disaster relief exercise conducted among BIMSTEC countries. You should know about the members of BIMSTEC, which includes Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Thailand. And the fact that this topic gets covered under security under GS paper 3, and questions can be asked either in the prelims or in the mains examination. With this, let's move to the question for the day. Now, based on our discussion, this becomes your practice question for the day. It says PENX 21 is a humanitarian assistance and disaster relief exercise conducted among the members of options are A. ASEAN, B. G20, C. SAARC and D. BIMSTEC. Now coming to the answer of yesterday, the question was, consider the following statements. Indian desert cat is only found in western desert of India. No, this statement is incorrect. Second, the cat is under the endangered category of IUCN. No, this is also incorrect as it is categorized as least concern. So the question was, which of the statements given above are correct? So the correct answer becomes D, that is neither 1 nor 2. So with this, we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you for watching DNS.